How can small businesses set themselves up for success without breaking the bank or relying on outside investors? Well, it is possible. It just takes some know-how, some savviness, and knowing the right tools to use. Today, we'll be talking to an expert in that area to shed some light on how you can bootstrap your small business to grow and succeed. Welcome to Momentum, a podcast by Jotform, where we talk about the technology, productivity tips, insights, and best practices that help us move forward in business and in life. My name is Elliot, your host, and today I'm here with LaShonda Brown, YouTuber and tech educator who helps small businesses flourish by giving them the tools and knowledge they need to thrive without having to dip into debt. I'm personally very excited for this conversation, and I think it will speak to a lot of our users and listeners out there. So, LaShonda, welcome to the podcast, and we're incredibly happy you could join us today.
Thanks so much for having me. This should be a lot of fun.
It should be. So let's get straight to it. Now, I just gave a top-level summary of what you do in helping provide businesses the tips and insights they need to succeed. But why don't you back up and give us some context in your own words about your background, how you got started on this track, and how you ended up where you are today?
So I think one of the most exciting things about my past is I've never had a full-time job working for anyone but myself. So I had a lot of freedom when it came to becoming an entrepreneur because I didn't have that much to leave behind. I was only making $500 a month working while I was going to college. And so I said, okay, my husband and I decided to start our own business. And I said, if I can make at least $500 a month, I'll leave my job. He was like, well, I hope we can do that. And so I decided to step away from that. And our very first business 10 years ago, which is still in existence today, was a video production company. And it has been an incredible process to go from being a service provider to becoming an educator. In between, I started my own marketing company. I was so inspired by my husband. I started a business of my own. And so I started to teach people how to use video content outside of just TV production. And over time, I realized that it would be helpful to create some tutorials for my clients. And then I noticed people were actually watching them who didn't know me. And little by little, I became a full-time educator using YouTube because of that journey.
Wow. That's an incredible story starting, from where you did to where you found yourself ending up. And I think it's kind of indicative of our times, right? There are so many people and businesses who are trying to make it. And in this internet age, finding the tools and resources to help you do so, now it's just a Google away. And these people are trying to figure out, what they can use to take their business or, their success story and elevate it. And you provide them that. And I think that's really inspirational. What was the inspiration behind your YouTube channel, which is called Bootstrap Biz Advice? It started with this idea of being an educator. When did you know that it would become something that you would start doing full time and could replace that $500 a week job? When did you know that this is what you were going to do? This is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so my degrees are actually in theater. My background is a theater arts performance and production major. And growing up, I wanted to be on Broadway and ultimately own my own theater. And as time went on, I decided to support my husband in his video production company and stepped away from theater. And what I learned is that I have an uncanny ability to speak while I teach tech. So 9 times out of 10, when I am actually walking through how to use a resource, I don't have a script and I have no clue what's going to come out of my mouth until I start recording.
That is impressive.
And it is awesome, and so like that realization of, wow, I can use my theater background in the tech community, it blew my mind. And then I started to realize the authority that I had to speak on resources. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I am an influencer. I'm influencing the choices that people make. And so I decided, you know what, why not become that mentor I always wanted and never had? When we started, we didn't know anything about business. My husband had a film background. I was an actor. And somehow we decided starting a business was a good idea. And so I thought, man, if I had someone who didn't make me sign up for 10,000 free trials and just showed me what worked, think of all the things I could have accomplished
Seriously.
if someone had been nice enough to share. And so that's really kind of my mindset with education is I want to share so that you spend less time trying to troubleshoot on your own and you can put that time toward other things that are better worth your time. And so people are so appreciative, even though it's sometimes the most minute thing I'm teaching, they go, no, you saved me 2 hours in Google, just telling me how to make a reel in Canva or how to make my first form in Jotform or whatever. And so I just started to realize that there's so much potential. There's so much potential for someone teaching tutorials that doesn't put you to sleep, that understands the entrepreneurship journey and speaks your language and doesn't overwhelm you. And so that's what I get all the time. People say, oh, you have a great voice, or oh, you're an awesome teacher, or oh, you're not trying to bait and switch me and sell me a product. I truly just want to teach. And it has been incredible to watch what's happened when you just have that servant mindset and you just show up, produce quality content. Somehow it becomes a job. And so that's what I do. And I love it.
Well, that is an awesome story, and your passion shows through. And I think, you mentioned Jotform briefly there. Obviously, we found you because of your online tech tutorials, like here at Jotform, and we've collaborated with you on several videos on your channel. We'll have some videos of yours on our channel that we're going to start publishing soon. That will be published by the time this podcast airs. So it really spoke to us and to us as marketers about how you can break down technology into easily understandable tidbits, which, as I mentioned, is so important for emerging small businesses who don't want to be bogged down by having to deal with all of this. If you're a Fortune 500 company, you have entire departments dedicated to technology. If you're a bootstrap business, you want to focus on your business, right? And I think being able to condense that into easily understandable terms for a quick fix for business people who are trying to elevate their platform is really powerful. So that's awesome. And before we go any further, I feel like we should clarify for our audience, people who might not know, what does Bootstrap actually mean? The name of your channel is Bootstrap Biz Advice. We've already mentioned that a few times. But how do you define Bootstrap for those who may be unfamiliar, and why should businesses want to be bootstrapped?
Yeah, so there's actually a saying about pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. And, sometimes that term has negative connotations. Some people say, oh, it's impossible to do that on your own. And so bootstrapping is a negative thing. But ultimately, when people use that term bootstrap, what they're saying is they're on a limited budget. And so they're forced to be in a position where they have to do it on their own until they can afford to pay someone else. And so my biggest thing is I want to give advice for people on a budget with a small team or doing it on their own. I'm not trying to teach a, large corporation about tech. I'm speaking to that person who just got laid off their job and is starting their own business, or someone working a side hustle, or someone going to college looking for a way to generate some money to pay off their loans. I'm really gearing everything that I do toward the mindset that you cannot afford to go into debt with this business advice. I'm not going to tell you rack up, your credit card debt in order to buy this program or this course or this tool. I know that you are on a budget. You are doing it on your own. You're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And so ultimately the goal is, if I can equip you with tools that will help you to grow your business in that phase, eventually you're going to outgrow it. And then you're going to be able to start to automate and delegate to something else and grow your business. And so ultimately, bootstrapping, I want to reduce the stigma of that. There's nothing wrong with you being on a budget, and so if I can help you to find solutions that fit where you are, instead of being ashamed of the stage you're in, that's going to propel you to the next level.
Absolutely. And I think you can speak so authentically to that because you were there, right? Starting your own business from nothing, trying to find a new job out of college. And, as you mentioned to begin with, it's what you would teach yourself in these videos, what you wish you go back and teach yourself to start out. And so many other people, as evidenced by your growing YouTube page, have found a lot of valuable insight and advice from that. So on the stigma of bootstrapping, you're right, there is a bit of a stigma. And it's so interesting, right? Because I think we live in a society where you're anticipated, if you're a founder, like, oh, you need to bring on the investors, you need to go into debt. But the moment you do that, you have to become accountable to shareholders, stakeholders. Your financial situation gets so precarious if you aren't, yielding these results that stakeholders want. And you want to grow your business the right way, not just in the way that your majority shareholders and stakeholders want, right? So I think it speaks to businesses of honestly all sizes, not just small businesses like Jotform. We're a bootstrap company still, and we have 350 or so employees. And our CEO, his mantra is to stay bootstrap. You don't need to always take on outside investments, especially right away, and even 10 years into a company, because then you can grow the company the way that you want. And this is really enabling companies to do that, because you're still just answering to yourself at this point if you're bootstrapped. So I couldn't agree more with that, and honestly, neither could Jotform as far as where we're coming from. So let's jump straight to kind of the nitty gritty. Your core tenets to success that you've kind of built over the years and you've taught people. There's obviously a lot that goes into making a business successful, and it's even trickier without going to debt or taking on investors. But if you had to really distill it, do you have just a few core tenets you preach that are applicable to pretty much any small business owner who's looking to grow without debt?
I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say toward being successful as a small business is just be transparent. I think the tendency is to always want to spin a situation. Mm-hmm. And if you can learn to really lean into transparency to say, hey, I'm not the best fit for everyone, but for the people that I am, I'm going to kill it for you. I think honestly, a lot of times, people will say, fake it till you make it. And, mm-hmm. When you're playing around with someone's, livelihood or literal life, you want to be honest about what your capabilities are and what they're not. And so I am always going to go for transparency and, ethics toward your recommendations or the services or the products you provide, because what happens is when you lead with transparency and you deliver value, then your customers become ambassadors and advocates for your brand. And so then you can lean more heavily on organic reach than paid advertising, because you've built up a community of people who believe and trust in you. And so that's my thing, whether it's advice I'm giving or businesses I'm running, people feel like they genuinely know me. And so they're rooting for me to be successful because I help them be successful. And so when it's mutually beneficial, your business is going to grow in a reasonable way at a steady pace, and you'll be fine. You won't have to lean on just throwing money at the issue. And so I've just seen through multiple ventures I've done since I was 18, I think I've done probably 6 at this point, and they've all been successful because they've been built on that foundation of transparency and trustworthiness and ethics. And so if you can do that, you can apply that to anything you're doing in business and you'll do well.
I really like that. I think that's so critical to highlight, not just in passing. You'll hear anyone say, "Oh yeah, you have to be transparent." Everyone's going to say that, right? But to say that's the really kind of the number one thing. I mean, if you think about it, your relationship as a business with your clients, it's like any relationship, with a significant other or family. It's built on a foundation of trust, and if that isn't there, the moment that starts to falter, it can be really hard to get that back. And I think you see a lot of news reports about certain large tech companies where they're hiding things, or some things come out, and there starts to be this momentum built up against them because they've lost that breach of trust. And I think it's harder to maintain that when you expand and grow so quickly and you're answering stakeholders and you need to meet certain requirements. So I think highlighting that as really kind of the number one thing to build your business off, that foundation of trust is so pivotal. And I like that answer a lot. And that really applies to any industry, right? Because I don't think we've talked into it yet. We're talking about, your channel talks about tech tools that any small business can use, but that really applies to any small business because you don't actually have to be a technology business to need tech tools. Like every business is going to need to have some kind of online presence. So I don't know if we clarified that, but what sort of industries are you speaking to, and do these tenets sort of apply equally to all of them?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly believe, especially when you're taking it from the standpoint of marketing outreach or productivity, most of my business tutorials will fall into that. So, if I can either save you money, save you time, or make you money, then my content's done its job. And so that's really what I filter everything through. It's like, okay, is this tech tool going to help you to just flat out grow your business? Or can I add more time to your day by teaching you how to use this app? Or can I save you money because this solution will allow you to get rid of some other subscriptions you have? And so thus it'll save you money. And so I'm really looking at how can I, in general, just help people on a budget. That's the common factor. It's not so much industry as it is you want to be fiscally responsible with how you run your operation, whether you're a nonprofit or you're a small business or even a larger corporation. If I can provide you with a solution that's going to stretch your dollar, ultimately your business is going to be more successful. And so that's really the funnel through which I put all of my content through.
Absolutely. And that is universally applicable, right? Productivity and marketing. And I think some people, especially small business owners who are so focused on their craft, they might not realize up front just how important marketing is to eventually growing the business to the place that you want it to be. Because, to have happy customers, you first need to draw the customers, right? So if I'm a small business owner and I've got most resources dedicated to my product or service, but knowing I need to market myself and get the word out there, how do I do that without breaking the bank? What are some of these favorite marketing channels that you use or that you recommend to get the word out? Because it doesn't matter what my hypothetical small business might be. It could be in the food industry, it could be in the service industry, it could be anything. Regardless, at some point, I'm going to need to market myself. And I think communicating that to small business owners is pivotal early on in the process so that they know. What are your tips for that if you're speaking to a small business owner who hasn't really delved into marketing yet?
Yeah, so I think that all marketing strategies are going to fall into one of two camps. Either it's going to be a short-term focus platform or a long-term focus platform. And what I mean by that is there are certain, say, social media platforms that are a better fit for time-sensitive information. If you are running a sale or a promotion, creating a YouTube video about that is probably not a good fit because ultimately YouTube has more of a long-term focus because it's so SEO driven. And so if I am running, a Black Friday sale, it would be better to use something like Facebook or Instagram to communicate that to my users because it's time sensitive versus YouTube is a better fit for evergreen content that's going to be more SEO driven to help me reach people that are looking for a solution to a problem. So oftentimes when you look at YouTube, you are talking to a group of people who are aware they have a problem and are looking for solutions versus, short-term focused marketing platforms are more people who have built a relationship with you. And so ultimately, they're looking for you to be more involved with them on a daily basis versus YouTube audiences may buy what you're selling even if they don't know you. So having a balance of the two is a really good way to market yourself. I don't recommend creating accounts across all platforms. You can't do it all. And so if you have a short-term and a long-term focused platform, that should be sufficient enough to get you started.
pick your battles, right? But at the end of the day, get yourself out there, especially if you're a small business looking to make an impact. And I think that's really valuable advice. Now let's dive into some of the fun stuff and start talking about your specific favorite tools that you like to recommend. Your channel is full of really helpful videos that take deep dives into different tools, a variety of different tools. And of course, I encourage any of our listeners to check out your channel. But can we get a short list of some of your favorite ones that generally are applicable to most businesses and your sort of go-to recommendations?
Yeah. So I'm so biased because there are certain platforms that I use all the time. Obviously, Jotform. I've literally been using that since day one. We use that in our video production company to have people upload their logos and information for their TV commercials. And it was amazing for that. That's so awesome. Obviously that goes without being said, but I absolutely love what's happening over at Canva. I think that they are the bootstrapper tool for graphic design. And for so many people who cannot afford to pay a graphic designer for their organization, they help students, they help nonprofits, they help small business owners. And I'm seeing as time progresses, them embrace merging with other smaller tech companies to provide even more resources to their communities. So Canva is a big one. I've got a lot of friends at Flowdesk. They're a new email marketing software, and they are really killing it from the standpoint of understanding that people don't want to be punished for growing their email list. And so as your list grows with Flowdesk, they don't increase the monthly rate.
Really?
And so it's really wild. And so, as your list grows on Flowdesk, you would think, okay, since I'm emailing 20,000 versus 2,000, it should cost me more. And right now, as the time of this recording, it does not. And so that is a huge disruption in the email marketing space that, you're encouraged to email more and to grow more because it won't cost you more to talk to your audience. So
it's like an anti-pricing model.
Yeah, for sure. And I really wish them all the success with that because it is so different, but I think it's so needed. And probably the last one that I like is the platform Honeybook. And what's cool about that is it becomes this all-in-one solution for people to send their contracts and invoices and questionnaires. And so for people who don't want to have 10,000 tools in their business and want to rely on a few to help facilitate the needs in their business, I think they're doing a really good job of providing a CRM system for people that allows them to really manage their client relationships and not be so scattered. So those are probably three of my favorite right now. And I think they all have the standpoint of embracing community. And I'm so community driven that I love how they're doing that behind the scenes, really talking to their users and developing features that best serve them.
Yeah, it feels like, first of all, this is a fantastic list, and it feels like even from what I know about most of these tools, they're really in it for the little guy, the business owner, not just the Fortune 500 company. They're in it for every single small business owner out there, and I love your stance on community and how these businesses sort of conduct themselves. I also like the disruptive pricing that you mentioned because that is so important. I think all the tools that you mentioned, including Jotform, do have some kind of disruptive pricing models compared to some of their larger, potentially flashier peers, right? And all of them speak to some version of productivity or marketing yourself that small businesses need. So this is all aligning with the sort of the mantra that you preach. And I think those are some great tools and resources. We'll be sure to link them in the description for the YouTube version of this video, at least. Now let's flip the coin a little bit. Let's talk about some of the biggest pitfalls that you see small businesses make and that you try to deter. We've talked about what businesses can do right, what tools they can use, but what can they so easily do wrong that are your top few pitfalls to avoid for small businesses? I'm sure you've seen some unfortunate stories out there, but I think it would be great for any of our listeners to hear, what can go wrong that you tell them to avoid.
So there are probably two that I see happen a lot. The first one would be the if you build it, they will come mindset and not marketing your business.
Marketing.
I think so many people focus so much on, I've got to build up my infrastructure. I've got to, hire the right people. I've got to work on the product. And all of that is wonderful. But if you don't have a system in place to communicate to your customers, you're not going to be able to pivot fast enough to stay in business. And we saw during the pandemic that if you were not able to communicate how your business practices were adapting due to precautions or mandates or, whatever the government was saying at the time, people lost out on business. Mm-hmm. If you're a restaurant and you can't communicate how to order online, how to do curbside pickup, or when you're open, when you're not, you've got to have these things in place so that when a message needs to reach your people, you have something already in place to do that. If you didn't have a website before the pandemic, if you didn't have an email list or social media platforms, it was too late to build them when you needed them. And so you've got to do that from the beginning.
And this is really sort of kind of a recent symptom, I guess, of our digital age with all the information out there and the easy access that users now have online to basically anything they want. If you don't have that presence of mind in, a customer's head, you're going to lose out. And once you get it, you kind of need to stay there a little bit because there's so many solutions and products and services out there. It's so important to keep that touch base. So it kind of does go back to marketing a lot, like I said. So I like that. I like that a lot. Is that, do you have any others or is that your main go-to?
Money management would be the
management. Other one. Okay. That was also a big one.
And, I think, I talk about this a lot, but I think people don't realize how many businesses just fail because they were bad at managing money. Mm. It wasn't that the product sucked. It wasn't that, the market didn't support it. It was that you spent money on things you shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. You didn't save when you shouldn't have. You started before you were ready or, so it all goes back to that money management. And so that's obviously why I talk so much about budget in regards to business tools. But, sometimes people, they don't realize how long it actually takes to be able to pay yourself in your business. They have this perception that you just start a business and then you get to match your salary.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. You're absolutely right.
And there is kind of a window of time where you have to pay your dues and you can't just transition from the salary you left to your new business and expect to get paid the same amount of money. And so if there's no money saved, and you're not paying yourself, eventually you're just going to run out of money.
Absolutely.
So marketing and money management, I would say, are the two biggest pitfalls.
And, money management, especially when you're bootstrapped, because if you're a big flashy, tech company that you just founded or something and you're getting outside investors help. Well, we've seen with those big flashy tech companies that even they can go out of business because of poor money management. Doesn't matter your size. These are just core tenets and foundations and principles. And I think any successful business owner will resonate so much with money management. And it's just so important to reiterate that, right? They can't hear that enough, especially starting out. So those are two really valuable takeaways. Thank you for sharing those. Now, let's kind of, again, because I love to sort of play devil's advocate. The purpose of your channel is this bootstrap advice for people who want to keep it low budget, who aren't taking on big teams, who aren't taking on big investors. At what point would they maybe want to do that? What is the sort of access point where okay, now you've set up the infrastructure, you have your marketing in place, you're going to an extent where you have to kind of seek other solutions to become successful and elevate your company to the next level. Is there a point at which you would say that is the case? Or are you kind of 100% in the camp, you never really need to do that? Sort of where does your philosophy lie on that line?
Yeah, I think it really comes from the mindset of what is it that you are ultimately trying to accomplish in your business. I don't think that managing large teams and being, multi-million-dollar businesses is the dream for everybody. Mm-hmm. For some people, if they just have an extra couple grand a month, then that's success for them. You have to define what success is for you when you're being bootstrapped. And so if ultimately you have a dream of having a large corporation, eventually you're going to need infusion from someone else in order to scale if you're trying to be that big.
Right.
But that's not the goal. I think not losing sight of the goal is the most important thing, because I've watched some people scale their business because people told them they should. Oh, if you had this, I would totally buy it. Or I wish you offered that. And as soon as they went down that route, the people that said they would buy didn't buy, and they tanked when they could have just stayed where they were. And so I think ultimately understand what it is that you want to accomplish in your business. And if you do want to scale, most people at a certain point, whether it's an infusion through a loan or it's an investment, you're just going to need the funds to be able to scale faster and to be able to handle what you're trying to scale up to. But I don't recommend that for everybody. For everyone, the dream doesn't have to be bigger and better. It could just be providing a job for yourself and being your own boss.
Sure. And I don't think that is preached enough. I think you see, blogs talking about like growing your company, and it's sort of almost the assumption that you want to get to that $1 million, global corporation standpoint. And that just isn't the goals for a lot of people, because that entails so much. And maybe that's not their dream, having your goals in mind and knowing that, no, it is not always going to be necessary unless that is specifically what you want. I do think that is an underpreached anecdote, piece of advice for a lot of small business owners out there, even if you just peruse a lot of the popular tech blogs and stuff. So I think that's really valuable advice personally. Now let's kind of scale back that question and talk about, if you are sort of this smaller business, what are the pros and cons that you would speak to about being a solopreneur and doing it mostly yourself, or maybe like a family business or something like that, versus starting to build out a team? At which point do you want to sort of take on that extra bandwidth, that it's more resources, right? But it will let you do more. How do you tell the small business owner who is trying to gauge his growth, whether to kind of stay the solopreneur or whether it's time to start building out that team?
Yeah, honestly, I believe that everyone should have a team.
Okay.
However, it doesn't have to be the traditional model of what a team looks like. So say, for instance, we're seeing now we're in an age of remote workers and virtual assistants and people who specialize in allowing you to outsource certain processes in your business. So I don't think if you have that CEO mindset that you need to do every task in your business. I don't think you should be doing your own taxes. I don't think you should be doing your own legal work. You know what I mean? Like we're not,
you could be
we're
doing
not
yourself
experts
to fail,
of everything.
Honestly. Right.
Yeah. You're not going to be, 100% across the board and all the things necessary to operate a business at a base level. So, basic things like a lawyer, an accountant, like these are simple things that should always be delegated in a business. So when I say solopreneur, I don't actually mean doing absolutely everything in your business by yourself. And so, I leverage vendors for that. I leverage assistants for various tasks. But if you want to expand to the point where you are managing people, there are people receiving full-time income from your organization to help you execute what you do, that's the turning point. It's, do I want to manage people, or do I simply want to have professional help for things that are not in my wheelhouse? And so that's really what you have to decide for yourself. I'm personally of the mindset that I, in this phase of life, don't want to manage people. It's one more thing to have to do. And so I am really putting a ceiling on my growth because I know there's only so much time I have, but it's intentional to provide me with the lifestyle that I want. I want to work less and not have to manage people. But if I did bring on more people, I could make more money, but I'd have more responsibility. So you've got to kind of gauge, what is it again that I want out of this? Do I want the most freedom possible, or do I want the most money possible? And so with more money becomes more responsibility.
Yep. It's like the Spider-Man quote, with more money comes more responsibility. But it really is. You make a good point, because, scaling just because you can doesn't always mean it's the solution that you want. And it doesn't always mean that that is going to provide you the lifestyle that you're looking for. It's not something that everyone has to do. And I like the point you make about like freelance helps, like, accountants and lawyers. No, you're not going to be able to necessarily do that, but you don't need to hire them full time either. You can hire them on a contract basis to help with certain things, or some kind of a retainer basis. And as far as everything else to run your company, I mean, first and foremost, a lot of the tools that you recommend your channel, those break down a lot of barriers to potentially needing experts, because those do make it a lot simpler if you did want to do a lot of that yourself. And hey, if you do want to grow, you can, but with that comes a lot more responsibility, a lot more time, and just evaluating if that is the goal that you want and that's what you want out of it. So again, I think another really valuable lesson and insight there. So let's take a bit of a time-sensitive approach this next topic. Given it is time recording this, late 2021, this will probably air early 2022, but we are still, almost a couple years into the pandemic. And in your experience, your channel has definitely taken off in the last couple years, I would say. But how have you seen businesses most impacted in the pandemic? Now, this is a broad topic, I'm sure, because it touches on a lot of things. But the last year and a half, almost 2 years, has been so pivotal for so many businesses. I think a lot have probably failed, unfortunately. Some have flourished. What's the differentiator between the two? What are some? How have you seen businesses impacted the most by COVID-19?
I hate to say it, but I think so many businesses realize the gap in their tech. They realize that things that they're like, oh, well, I can survive without a great website. I can get away with not having online payment processing. I can deal with not, having social media that's engaging and thought provoking. And what happened with the pandemic is all of a sudden word of mouth and in-person anything disappeared.
Yep.
And people began to realize that the only way that I can continue to stay relevant is to have an online presence. That you couldn't, at the beginning, you couldn't even have a hybrid experience because people didn't even understand what that looked like.
Right.
And they didn't feel safe to be even remotely in person. And so all of a sudden you had all these businesses go, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared. I didn't realize I really should have had online ordering, or I really should have had a better system for XYZ. And so for me, the pandemic became this magnifying glass on people who were not equipped to leverage technology in their business. And so people were learning Zoom for the first time. They were updating their websites. Right. They were, building social media accounts and scrambling. But those who already had the systems in place just ramped it up. And the ones who were able to ramp things up really thrived. And so it's kind of a weird situation where, yes, you did watch a lot of businesses close, but you saw a lot of businesses grow, and you also saw a lot of businesses start up. People saw an opportunity to create solutions to these problems, and they said, okay, now everyone needs to live stream and they don't know how. I'm going to have a live streaming business, or however. And so I think it was very interesting because people took a lot for granted when it came to tech. And then when that happened, all of the techies, all of the geeks, we rejoiced.
Yes,
because people needed us.
Yes, we did. Suddenly people need online forms. It's great. Yep. Your business didn't have one before. You definitely need one now, but you make such a good point. It speaks to the adaptivity of the human spirit. That out of this, I think a lot of businesses did start and did flourish and realize their niche. We're so good at adapting and kind of figuring out what we need to do. And with COVID, it became a truly online era. It already was before, but after COVID, like truly online. And I think you make an excellent point. Like some businesses, maybe they didn't really have the tools or infrastructure in place to succeed. But guess what? The businesses that are coming after, or that business ended up giving birth to, definitely does now. They definitely have those tools because they know that they have to. And that's where, helpful and invaluable resources like yourself come in and equip them to succeed. I don't think it's probably not a fluke that your channel has grown so much, really in the last couple years, because more so than ever, small business owners are trying to find these online solutions to connect with their customers. So I think, it's been a difficult situation for all, but as with everything, there is always a silver lining, and I think it's a pretty big silver lining. So that's a positive takeaway. Finally, let's get to a couple success stories. What are there examples of businesses that you've seen who've really flourished, who have really either turned things around or started from nothing? I don't know if there's specific examples or just specific paths that you've seen businesses follow, but what can you speak to that has really been a success lately?
I think people who began to realize just the power of a website. I think before people just took websites for granted, but the ones that really leaned into it and they started to integrate tech into their site, whether it was, something as simple as online scheduling for meetings. That was one of the biggest things that came out of the pandemic was like, people were like, I need to schedule all these meetings and how will I tell people I'm available and how will I send invitations and watching them embrace online scheduling. I'm like, it'll change your life. These little things.
That's so important.
It's so important. And people they didn't see the necessity, and so now I just get so excited watching people get a little bit more of their life back by trusting tech to do it for them. And so I think that really was a hesitancy before. It was just like, it's unfamiliar. It's overwhelming. I'll just do it manually. I'll do it the old school way. And now people are going, okay, there are better ways to do this. And so watching people embrace tech to me is success. Watching them say, I can do this. I'm not intimidated anymore. I'm not overwhelmed. And then watching them have more time to do the things that they love. Like that's a win for me.
Absolutely. And I was actually going to ask, my next question was going to be, how do you gauge your own success? Like with you starting this education channel and this journey, what is sort of your standard that you're trying to get to? What are you trying to achieve? What do you look at the end of the day and was like, I did a good job today. This is what I wanted. I can go to bed happy now. How do you evaluate that?
Yeah, for me, it's people who are willing to essentially provide testimonials, whether it's in a comment or they share a piece of content, but that interaction with the people watching you. When you create a YouTube video, you're talking to yourself and you're putting it on the internet and you have no idea what's going to happen
in the moment when you're doing
when
it,
you really think about it. You're creating in this vacuum and you're like, wow, I hope this is helpful. And, I hope that someone gets some value out of this. And then the minute that they leave that comment, the minute that they share it on social media and tag you and you realize, oh my gosh, that one little video provided 5 jobs for people, or that one little video allowed this person to go from being stressed out and overwhelmed to smiling again. I love for people to talk back to me. So I know there are human beings consuming this content and it's helping them, because as long as I know that they are being helped by these resources, I can keep going and keep creating. But if I don't think it's making a difference, then it's like, well, I could do other things with my time. So please comment, send me a DM, let me know. And some of those stories, when people write a paragraph in a YouTube comment and tell you what it's done in their life, there's nothing like that. So I'm very appreciative of my community for that.
That's awesome. Well, from what I have seen on your YouTube channel, you are definitely beloved and have helped many people. Lots of great engagement on your videos, and it's cool seeing. It's important, tech companies like us, like Jotform, we are out there trying to break down the barriers of technology, making it easier for people to adapt and integrate. But ultimately, we know we're just one solution. And for small business to really be successful, they do need more than Jotform. They do need more than any one tool can provide. And educators like yourself who come to them with multiple tools and advice to sort of wrap that all up into one package to elevate their technology success and elevate their business. That's really the backbone of it all. That's what you need, what so many small businesses need. So I think it's just tremendous what you're doing, and we're really appreciative of your work, as are thousands of people who subscribe to your YouTube channel. So it's definitely inspirational for myself and the other people at Jotform and all your audience. And I think that's all that I had as far as prepared questions that I want to ask, but kind of wanted to leave it in your court. If there's anything we missed, any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to leave on or impart, I'll leave it an open floor for you.
Yeah, well, for sure. I would encourage anybody listening who really likes my perspective on tech to just connect with me. The easiest way is obviously, following me on social media and subscribing to my channel. But I really love sending emails once a week and updating people about my life and telling them about new things happening in the tech world. You guys do not have the time to stay on top of all of these updates. I'm telling you right now, like, it is a full-time job to stay on top of what people are doing in the tech community. New features that are rolling out, new problems that have been pointed out, new solutions. And so if you simply don't have the time to stay on top of the tech needed to run a business online, and you could benefit from someone doing that work for you, then I would encourage you to check out my website and subscribe to my email list. I'm working on a coupon book that is going to rock your world.
Very excited for that.
It's going to help you save money and save time and make money. So it's going to check all the boxes. And so ultimately, I think that by providing a platform on YouTube to educate you, I'm essentially becoming a member of your team. I'm becoming that tech department, that IT department that you can't afford to have right now, to help you to navigate through that journey. So if you need that, then I would love to help you.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you have been an absolutely wonderful partner, amazing to collaborate with. We're excited to continue our collaboration with you. I would absolutely encourage anyone to check out your YouTube channel, Bootstrap Biz Advice, or your website, LaShondaBrown.com. We will be linking to both of these resources in our description. I just want to say thank you again for agreeing to appear on this episode. This was really amazing and insightful. I think you have a lot of knowledge. I'm really excited to hear the user feedback on this one. So thank you again, LaShonda. Really appreciate you appearing today.
No problem. And I'll see you guys on YouTube.
I'll see ya.